Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. Today I want to talk about how I got into and out of over $50,000 of personal debt. Paying it off for about 6 months now. I'm $50,000 down and I would say I have about that much left to pay as well. But I think the method I've been using really helped change my situation, and then the mindset shifts that I have done along the way has really changed the way that I look at and deal with my finances in a way that makes me feel confident that I will be able to pay off the remainder of my debt and hopefully never get into this situation again. A quick disclaimer, this is what works for me personally. I'm a single millennial woman. I have a decent income, although it varies. I'm a freelance writer. I'm able to go out and kind of get more work as needed. So I wanted this video to kind of be a combination of what worked for me personally and also maybe some things that you could also use in your own life. But yeah, I just wanted to add that this is what has been working for me as somebody that's in a situation that might look different from somebody on a fixed income. Okay, let's jump into it. So I got into debt in the first place by by being totally irresponsible with my money. I was a new freelancer during 2020 and I kind of just spent on whatever I wanted to, lessen the load of the crap storm that whole situation was. And then my partner was out of work, so I was supporting the both of us a little bit as well. And then, I decided to get a master's degree, so I racked up student loan debt. Then I went through a breakup and moved out on my own, so it was kind of just like the perfect storm of spending money somewhat irresponsibly and not, taking control and trying to pay it off. What made me want to start getting out of this personal debt was just the constant stress of having to go out and try to find more freelance writing work, which is an industry that's pretty volatile and kind of hard to make a decent income consistently. So knowing that and I wasn't even trying to take care of my debt, to be honest with you. I was just living too extravagantly and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. It was ridiculous to try to live the way the Real Housewives were living on a freelance writer income, and I guess one day I just woke up and realized this is not how I want to be living. After trying to figure out what I was going to do, I decided to follow Dave Ramsey's snowball method. And I know people have a lot to say about him, but the snowball method, which is essentially paying off your smallest to largest debts, it really worked for me because it helped me kind of get the little dopamine hits of paying off kind of smaller credit card bills and then leading up to the bigger tax bills. So that's how I started. And from there, I became obsessed with budgeting. I used the Every Dollar app, and for a couple of months, I still do it, but for the first few months I was tracking every single little expense that I had made. I was looking at past months as well, and then at the end of the month I would just look at the completely unnecessary spending that I was doing, and I just chose to cut all of that immediately. So the subscription services that I forgot about, Amazon Prime is very sneaky as well. I cut that. Anything I could do, I called and I asked to get a lower cell phone plan, just anywhere that I could shave off, even $5 in certain cases, I thought was worth it. It got to a point where, and I still do this, I would mull over the smallest purchases. For example, on a Friday night before I was doing this, I would spend easily $200 just on, takeout and a nice bottle of wine or whatever for me and some friends. Now it's on a Friday night, I'm okay, I will have something other than water with my dinner, and I will mull over whether or not I want to spend $1 at the dollar store for a bottle of Diet Coke. So that's how seriously I take budgeting every dollar. The next thing I did that I think helped me pay off my debt faster as a freelance writer with sporadic income was save up exactly how much I needed to get through the month. So my number was about $3,000, and that includes my rent, my utilities, my groceries, everything that I need. And so at the beginning of the month, I would save up the $3,000 with my sporadic freelance income. I have about 10 to 15 sometimes different companies that I write for. So the income comes at random throughout the month, but saving up that $3,000 in a separate savings account and knowing I had that ready for the first of the month when my bills start coming out the next month, then I knew anything else that came in from freelance writing would be able to go directly onto my debt. And I found that to be very helpful in feeling in control while paying off my debt and not accidentally putting more money than I could afford to onto my debt, while also not having random amounts just sitting in my checking account not doing anything. I found that initial setup to be very intimidating, and I think that's a big reason why I was so reluctant to budget for so long. When you go from having a fixed income where you get paid every 2 weeks like clockwork to getting paid sometimes every few days to sometimes every few weeks, and sometimes even having to chase after missing invoices, I found it to be very intimidating as somebody that had very limited financial knowledge and who was reluctant to be responsible with my personal finances. But making sure that I have the money to cover my bases by the time the first of the month comes around has made it so much easier to kind of, deploy my dollars where they need to go. So I mentioned that I went through a breakup when I was starting to do this, and I decided to move back to my hometown when that happened. I was living in one of the bigger cities in Canada, and then I decided to move back to the East Coast. That's where my family lives. It didn't necessarily align with, trying to pay off my debt. Once I moved here, I found out that the cost of living is actually more expensive than the city that I was living in previously. I'm living in Halifax now, and before that I was living in Montreal. But getting a change of scenery and moving somewhere where I don't have the same kind of like habits built for, going to the expensive wine bar and spending money on a Friday, to now I live in my hometown. All of my high school friends have either moved out into the country or they've left this city entirely, so I don't have the same temptations that I did when I was living in Montreal. And I will admit that it's also been very nice to be able to go to my parents' house for a weekend dinner sometimes, or go with my stepdad when he goes to Costco and, he'll share his bag of oranges with me, or things like that that kind of help to cut down my grocery budget a little bit. The next thing I did to pay down my debt as quickly as possible was to sell all of my designer handbags and accessories. So ever since I was a child, I can remember desperately wanting a closet full of designer handbags. I grew up watching Paris Hilton on TV, and then as an adult, the Kardashians, the Housewives, and I just thought it would be amazing to have that like perfectly lit closet full of, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, Chanel. And so even when I was working at Tim Hortons as a teenager, I would save up money and then spend it on whatever Louis Vuitton bag I could get. And by the time I turned 30, I had a pretty decent collection of vintage Louis Vuitton, a couple of Chanel, and an Hermes Birkin that for some reason I thought I could afford. I regret spending money on these items when I had no savings. I remember I was at the Chanel store in Paris on a work trip, and I bought a bag using half cash and half credit card because my credit card limit was lower than the price of the bag, and then I spent months trying to pay off that credit card. I think I probably just paid it off this year in full, and I bought that bag 3 or more years ago. So I had no business collecting all of these designer bags. But I'm glad that if I had to have a vice when I was being financially irresponsible, that it was designer handbags, because selling them all off, although it hurt, I've collected them since I was 15 years old. That's half my life. I've been a Louis Vuitton collector, which is weird and embarrassing to say. But selling those off and making a little bit of profit from them, especially the ones I bought as a teenager, it definitely helped bring down my debt load. Whereas, if my vice as a teenager and a 20-year-old was, say, like doing Forever 21 hauls, I don't think I would have been, you know, able to make back any of the money that I spent on something like that. So do I regret buying these bags? Yes, but I'm still glad that it was these bags and not some other vice. Also, why did I think I needed a Birkin bag? It's just ridiculous to think about that. I was severely in tax debt. I couldn't afford to put it on a single credit card. It was just like, I was scared to use it once I had it. Like, who did I think I was? It's just wild to think about where my mindset was at that time. Anyway, I'm just looking at my notes here, and I wrote down for the next one, stop doing anything fun. And while I think that is a bit of an exaggeration, I did cut out alcohol completely. I cut out things like Uber Eats. I don't go to restaurants. I mean, it sounds like a sad existence, but I barely see friends, mostly because they all live outside of the city. My life now looks a lot like, you know, cooking basic meals at home, hanging out with my cat, doing free Pilates workouts. I took swimming lessons at the community pool. I decided that was something I wanted to spend on. I think it cost like $30 a month for the membership, and I paid it in like one lump sum for 6 months. So it's not that I stopped having any fun, it's just that I had to redefine what fun looked like. So I think when you're trying to pay off debt, you have to get a little bit creative with what you're willing to spend your money on. And for me, although I love eating out at restaurants, you know, I love buying a nice bottle of wine, I look at the price tag now and I think, oh, that $50 meal, that money could be going right onto my debt. And it's very hard for me to justify going out. The next thing I did to pay off my debt quickly was to surround myself with like-minded individuals. In Montreal, I had a lot of friends who were kind of in a similar place as me, you know, young adults with decent jobs. So I don't want to call anybody out, but I think we were all kind of spending a little bit above our means in certain situations. And now that I'm in full frugal, paying off my debt mode, I can't afford to be around people that have that mentality right now. So for me, living in my hometown where I don't really know anyone, it's very weird, but I read a lot of books on frugality and being financially responsible. I watch a lot of YouTube videos from other creators who talk about their own debt-free journey and living frugal. And I find this kind of content to be extremely motivating and helpful, especially when in my own personal life, I don't know a lot of people who place such a serious focus on, you know, getting out of debt and becoming financially responsible. So finding these kind of niches wherever I could, I think has played a huge role in, you know, sustaining this mindset and being able to keep putting one foot in front of the other in terms of paying off my debt. The next thing I did was to put my ego to the side. I think that for a long time I wanted to look like somebody that was very, you know, financially not well off, but I wanted people to look at me and think, oh, she's doing well for herself. That's surprising. She's a freelance writer and, you know, she's carrying an Hermes bag. Good for her. And I think I let my obsession with how I was perceived kind of get in the way of what everything looked like, you know, behind closed doors. And so a big thing for me has been to just let go of that ego and to not be afraid to tell people like, hey, no, you know, I can't go out for drinks, or like, I'm not gonna go on this trip with you because I have a lot of debt that I need to pay off. People in my life have been surprisingly supportive of that. So as soon as I made it known that it wasn't, you know, a fleeting thing, I was serious about getting out of this debt. It was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. And along with that, I think you have to get comfortable with saying no. You can't, you know, just people please your way out of debt. if you're serious and committed to getting out of debt, you have to just, you know, stick to your plan. Don't go over budget just because somebody's inviting you to go out to a fancy dinner. Like, you just have to be okay with saying no. And you can propose alternatives. Like, one of my favorite things to do is go have a drink in the park and, you know, play a board game or something like that. And you'd be surprised by how open people are to alternative ways of hanging out, if that makes sense. And you also have to be okay with letting people help you when possible. So for me, I used to love treating my friends. If we went out for drinks or dinner, I would love to surprise them and get the bill. Now on the rare occasion that I do go out with friends and somebody offers to pay, I don't fight it as much as I used to. If I know that my friend is doing it because they want to be nice and they had a good time, like, I will let them pick up the tab, which sounds really cheap now that I'm saying it out loud. I don't like invite friends out just so that they will buy me dinner. But you know, if somebody's offering to do something nice for you, I think that it's important to say yes. An example is my stepdad goes to Costco for my family on a weekly basis, and sometimes he'll offer to, you know, bring me a bag of oranges or like stock up my bagel supply or something like that. And if it were me a year ago, I would say no, but now that he knows I'm really working hard to get out of this hole that I put myself in, I find it's okay to say yes when, you know, people are just trying to help you out. The last thing I did to help get myself out of debt, and I know people don't like to hear this one, but I really ramped up what I took on as a freelance writer. I looked for more work. I have more time now that I'm not, you know, going out and going to dinners all the time and whatever, what have you. And I took on some things that maybe I wouldn't have before. I'm really just, you know, I am a lifestyle writer, so I can write about a lot of different things. And although now I'm, you know, I work in the evenings and the weekends more than I did before, I think that if you're on a fixed income and you're able to take on some side work, it makes such a big difference. And if you're on a sporadic income like I am, just having the extra income on top of what you're used to making, it really helps push the needle a lot faster. I still have a long way to go when it comes to paying off my debt. I have gotten rid of my credit card debt. I've paid off my student loans, but I still have a lot of tax debt that I ignored for years that is kind of catching up with me now. But I really think that this change in mindset that I've had, living more frugally, living more minimally, and kind of challenging myself to find ways to save money wherever I can, it's a mindset that I'm happy to stick with. It feels like almost gamifying, you know, living frugally. And you know, there are certain things that I miss about my more frivolous lifestyle. Seeing my debt go down and knowing that I will be, you know, debt free and maybe one day financially free, it's so motivating. And I'm just so grateful that even though it was scary to tackle this, knowing exactly what my financial situation is, even if it's not the best, every day it's getting better. It's one step at a time, and I look forward to the day that I can make another video saying that I'm completely out of debt. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more frugal living stuff like this. Bye!